Our next guest is an attorney, the co-chair of Women for Trump, Indian Voices for Trump, also the RNC National Committee chairwoman for the state of California, and now the co-chair of Lawyers for Trump. And he needs a bunch of them because we're fighting battles in, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 different states. Harmeet Dhillon joining me now to discuss more on where the battle stands for Team Trump. Hi, Harmeet. How you doing? I think we're having some problem with your audio there. I don't know if that's on our end or on your end. We'll see if we can get that figured out here real quick. Harmeet, we'll try it one more time. Can you hear me? There we go.
How about now? Can you hear me? Sorry.
Totally fine. That's technology. We got to deal with it with all the COVID craziness and lockdowns and Skypes and Zooms, right? This is our future, hopefully for not too much longer. Harmeet, welcome to the show. Now that we got that audio problem figured out, where do we stand with Team Trump and all these legal battles? We've got them in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona. Did I miss any? Nevada?
No, there's 6 states. There's 6 states where they're going on. You mentioned them. And in Georgia, the Secretary of State has already announced a statewide hand recount of all of the ballots as well as an audit. That's a very important step. And so that's going to start soon, very soon. And we have recruited hundreds of lawyers from all over the country to come and be the observers for that. We also have litigation going on in multiple states. I think there was a hearing earlier today in Arizona, and there have been multiple filings made in court, whistleblowers coming forward, affidavits of fraud. And then, of course, the biggest enchilada, if you will, is in Pennsylvania, where there's a case pending before the United States Supreme Court that involves the counting of ballots that arrive after the deadline. And there's also a lawsuit that has been filed in Pennsylvania that will have a hearing next week and some filings today regarding some other irregularities. And I don't mean fraud, I mean statewide election official issues of waiving requirements like signature and date and address requirements and other requirements like that. So we have to wait till all of these things percolate their way through the courts, and I think it's going to happen pretty quickly. And only then will we know the final count of this election and whether it should be certified for one side or the other.
This reminds me of that FBI's tweet that all came out during the Russian hoax scandal, Peter Zork's the insurance plan. Seems like they had a lot of layers of insurance plans. Like, hey, we can have the Dominion software here kind of rig some stuff with the software. We can make sure we don't allow poll observers from the GOP to watch what we're doing, and if we count things differently, they won't see it. We can go out and ballot harvest in Democratic areas, but not in Republican areas. Don't let them do that. We can change stuff. We can throw stuff away. I mean, this has so many layers of fraud, irregularities, and illegal activity. It's mind-boggling to me.
You're absolutely correct. And so, we hear a lot of talk of fraud because the F word is quite attractive and click-worthy. But you don't need to commit fraud to steal or win an election illegally. It can be done with law. It can be done with election officials. Election officials can simply close their eyes and waive requirements that the legislature put into place. That's happening in Pennsylvania, 100%. You can have the similar situation in other states like Nevada, where they simply use the machines, the Dominion machines and others, and they turn down the sensitivity on signature matching so that all of the signatures match magically when in a normal election somewhere from between 3 and 10% of vote by mail ballots are thrown out for that reason. You can have election officials who block observers from observing the vote in a meaningful way. In Pennsylvania, that's 600,000 ballots where Republican observers were not allowed to observe. And of course, as we saw on numerous affidavits that are coming forward, dead people voting. Now, dead people vote by fraud in every election. I'm going to say that, but not in these numbers and not in what looks like a systematic harvesting of dead people from the voter rolls. And the only reason why this is even possible is because secretaries of state don't do their statutory federal job to clean the voter rolls regularly. And that's something that the Republican Party needs to pay attention to, not after an election, but actually well before an election. So that's something I've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah, Republicans got to get more bite in their bark and step up when these things happen. As you just said, and you're fine with saying it on this program, dead people have been voting for decades. Voter fraud, irregularities, illegal activity have been going on since pre-Nixon. I would say, and there's proof out there, just everyone wants to avoid it, ignore it, and especially during this election, not even talk about it as the lamestream media continues to brush all these accusations, all these what I would call brave Americans who've come forward and signed these affidavits. They don't even cover this stuff. They're just pushing under the rug. Nope, move on. Biden's the president. Trump lost. No, maybe there was a little bit of voter fraud, but not enough to change the election. That's not what we're seeing in this election. We know it's happened for decades, but this one, it is widespread. Nobody wants to say that word. I'll say it. It's widespread. Would you agree?
I would agree that there are widespread irregularities of all the different types that you mentioned. I'm going to suspend judgment on some of these issues because I think that we have yet to see some of that evidence. So with regard to, for example, people rigging voting machines to switch hundreds of thousands of votes, I've seen that allegation. I do not know about that. But what I do know is that election officials are, with a smile on their faces, breaking the law. And that is, you can take that to the bank, and it is being taken to court and being challenged in court.
Well, and Pennsylvania did it, as you alluded to earlier, with their Supreme Court. They bypassed their legislator, which does have a large portion of GOP folks serving in their state legislature. They bypassed the voters of the Keystone State. They just went to the Supreme Court and changed their rules weeks before the election and said they could count them days after, which you said that's the case that is at the United States Supreme Court, which I think they're going to strike that down. And then you're going to have potentially how many ballots thrown out? Are we talking hundreds of thousands or a million or so?
No. That's probably, it is 100% in excess of 10,000 ballots. It is probably not 100,000 ballots. So we don't know the numbers yet,
so
because
we don't
some
know
of these
the
states
number
are
of
dragging
ones
their
that came
feet.
in late.
Yeah.
Which were affected by that state
10,000.
Supreme. At least 10. Okay.
It's at least 10,000, according to their own Secretary of State, who's biased. But when you're talking about a margin of 50, you have 10,000, let's call it 10,000 votes there. It's probably more. And then you have about 10,000 ballots that have been counted in Philadelphia alone, despite lack of signature, lack of date, lack of address, all of which are required by law in Pennsylvania. So that makes it 20,000. You have another county where they waived the requirement that the ballot be dated. That was like 2,400 ballots. So you're pretty much approaching very quickly the number
and
that's the halfway point.
And the 600 some thousand you said that GOP observers couldn't observe.
Well, we don't throw those out, okay?
Right.
We don't throw those out.
What did they do, though, when people weren't observing?
You have to recount those. You have to recount those.
And real quick, because they're wrapping me up, Harmeet, I want to point out the difference between, and I think this is what's needed, between a recount and an audit and recount. Audit means you check, like you were just saying, you make sure it's dated, it's signed properly, the person's not dead. You audit the background of this voter and that ballot. You don't just recount. Because obviously if you recount what we have, the numbers won't change much. We need audits and a recount in these battleground states, correct?
That's right. And so, for example, one allegation in Michigan by a whistleblower is that a stack of 50 ballots was fed into the machines repeatedly. So if you look at those ballots may be valid. But if you audit the number of ballots that are counted in that district compared to the number of ballots that came in, you would notice a discrepancy.
Yeah, if they ran it through 50 times, you got 250 votes, not 50. All right, Harmeet, you know the drill. They're hard wrapping me. I got other guests, but man, you are a plethora of knowledge, so we always appreciate you coming on the show and letting us know what's going on. Come back real soon. Fill us in.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.